Welcome to training session number 7. Today, we will learn about 5 discipling practices that will help you optimize your missional community for Jesus' discipling goals.
In our last session, we pointed out the discipling template in chapter 16 of the book Joining Jesus, Show Me How. It's set up around 3 main questions. Who will I disciple? Why will I disciple them? And how will I disciple them?
You began to answer the questions of who and why last time. Today we're going to drill down on the how. How will I disciple my family and friends? To help you craft that part of your plan, the template is organized around how Jesus discipled his followers in the Gospels.
Do you remember the 3 key parts of Jesus' discipling process? First, there is proclamation, or tell me how. Then there is imitation, or show me how. And finally, there is replication, or show others how.
Now, over the years, Susan and I have found that a key to emulating Jesus' discipling process is our time with family or friends in missional community. However, there's a problem. Our time together in missional community is usually limited. So the challenge becomes, how do we optimize the limited time we have together for accomplishing Jesus' discipling goals?
In answer to that, we've developed 5 discipling practices that frame and direct our missional community so we more consistently engage Jesus' discipling process and therefore accomplish his discipling goals. The practices aren't from the Gospels per se, but from simply working through the practicalities of using Jesus' process to disciple 21st century people. Here are the 5 discipling practices we advocate. Remember our true identity and mission in Christ. Remember that in here is for out there. Ask good questions. Remember, all that is still this. Move from insight to action.
The first discipling practice probably sounds pretty familiar. Remembering our true identity and mission in Christ. Every time we gather with our missional community, whether with friends or family, the first thing we do is remind each other, this is who we are in Christ. This is what we have in Christ. And this is what we do in Christ. That's our first priority.
Why is this first? Because it's really easy to get overwhelmed by everyday life and forget. If only we could remember that our true identity and purpose comes from being a beloved child of the Heavenly King, and not from what we think or what others say.
And so, at the start of every missional community, we remind each other that through baptism into Christ, this is who we are. We are beloved children of the Heavenly King. This is what we have. We have the things of His kingdom, and in abundance. And this is what we do. We look for people who need a little of what we already have in abundance and offer it to them. That's our true identity and mission in Christ.
Practice number 2 is to remember that in here is for out there. What does that mean?
Like the first discipling practice, in here is for out there is a practice of remembering. We look for opportunities during our missional community time to remind each other that what we do in here as a group has its focus and purpose out there in our daily lives for the good of others.
One of the main reasons we need to use this practice is because it's so easy to focus on ourselves in here and forget about the mission of God out there.
It's really natural for North American Christians to spend their time and focus on each other. We become holy huddles, caring for each other and feeling comfortable with people like ourselves. But that's not the goal of the missional community. It's important that we enjoy each other and care for each other, and we do. But the reason we gather in here is to help each other focus on participating in the mission of God out there, where people we know still need the grace and truth of Jesus. And so we practice reminding each other of that.
The third discipling practice is to ask good questions. Most of us have experienced the power of being asked a good question. Good questions cause us to reflect and consider things from a new perspective. They often lead to moments of insight.
And so, as we gather in missional community with our family or friends, one of the key practices for discipling them is asking them good questions. We use good questions to prompt reflection and conversation about how life on mission with Jesus is going. This leads them to new insights and clarity about what Jesus is up to and how they can respond.
And that's why we crafted the 5 questions. They are a toolbox of good questions we can use to prompt stories and insights. There are many other questions we could use, but the 5 questions help us stay focused on framing and directing the conversation toward Jesus' discipling goals.
Our 4th discipling practice is,
All that is still this.
this practice is a tool for helping your missional community get back on track when they need it. What do I mean by that? Sometimes the conversation of our missional community can get lost in the theological weeds. So if you feel like it's time to steer things back on course and restore perspective for the group, you can remind them, hey, all that is still this. Every biblical question or teaching still leads back to this simple truth. Our true identity and mission have been restored in Christ. That means we are beloved children of the Heavenly King, and we live our lives for the good of others. All that is still this.
And discipling practice number 5 is moving people from insight to action. The conversation in our missional community will consistently prompt insights about our life on mission with Jesus. However, gaining an insight about that is not the same as gaining experience in it. For that, we need to take the insight and turn it into action.
And that's what the practice, Insight to Action, helps with. We give the group an opportunity to clarify the insights they have had during the missional community, and then figure out how to turn those insights into action for the good of others during the coming week.
You can prompt this by simply asking, what insight did you receive today? And how can you put it into action for the good of others? With a little time to share their responses, they're ready to head out the door with a new insight and a simple plan of action for joining Jesus on his mission.
So while our time together in missional community is limited, we can optimize it by using the 5 discipling practices to frame and direct the time toward Jesus' discipling goals. With a little practice, they'll become effective tools in your hands.